One of the most iconic mountain bike brands from the 90s is Klein, and I've come to a top secret location to see an impressive collection of Klein. So come with me, we can have a look. Oh my goodness, what an amazing collection of bikes. I've never seen anything like this in all my days. Where to start? Well, let's meet the lucky owner of this collection and find out more about these bikes and why they mean so much to him. Man, look at that paint job. Isn't that insane? Wow, they don't make them like that anymore, do they? So I'm joined by Andy, who owns this impressive collection of Klein mountain bikes and has agreed to share it with us. Well, where to start? I guess we should start with why retro Kleins?
It's a very good question. Well, I got into mountain biking in early 1990. I did my first mountain bike race, which was the Hell of the North Cotswolds in Winchcombe.
Okay.
1990, cold day, and I rode terribly. But I remember one of the most striking moments was quite early on as it went into sort of a real technical climbing section and getting overtaken by this green, white, pink Klein. It was like a monster of a machine. And from that point onwards, I was sort of probably 17 years old, fell in love with the brand, could never afford one because they were outrageously expensive at the time. Even more outrageously expensive now, but always lusted after this bike, and then kind of got into the industry, but always thought, wouldn't it be great to get that bike that I always wanted and never could afford? And so about 2-3 years ago, sort of made a focused effort to do that, managed to find one in Switzerland, which I got restored, got all the right parts, and thought that was that.
But before we go on, is that bike?
Which is this bike here?
This bike here. So that's a bike that came flying past you.
Yeah. So that's a 1991 Klein. So they kept the same colour for 2 years. Klein Attitude, and probably the most sort of noticeable colour of all time with Klein. And loved it. Thought that would be it. And then one thing led to another. And here we are today.
And one became 20?
Yeah, with a few at the office as well. Then yeah, we're about 20 at the moment.
That's quite impressive to go from one.
Yeah, well, it kind of doesn't happen overnight. You know, it's a sort of an ongoing thing, and I suppose it awakened in me a passion for my late teenage years, and that real birthplace of mountain bike. So that was really satisfying to get that sorted, and then after that, it was just keeping a real close eye on what the product became available, building some contacts with other collectors in Europe and further afield, and slowly but surely one became another.
And have you ridden this bike?
I've not ridden that one, I've ridden this one.
Okay.
So this was slightly earlier. That's a late 1990, early 91 model. Very similar frame, but just with a different fork. So that was a more boxed, sort of a bit of a harsher fork, and then they came out with a sort of the softer crown, and then carried that through them for the next few years. But they're amazing to ride, obviously, you know. But I think a lot of the fun is in the look and the appeal of just these wild colours that were very in vogue in those early 90s.
You're very fortunate that's a bike that flew past you and not another brand.
Absolutely. Plenty of bikes flew past me, I can assure you that. I mean, virtually everybody flew past me, but that one was so distinctive at the time. Yeah. Just as neon was, you know, very much in vogue. I
mean, they're famous for like massive oversized tubes, big fork, I mean, a one-piece handlebar, which is now in trend as well.
A lot of internal bearings in the headset and the bottom bracket. These are just sort of things that we accept now, but they did that 30 years ago.
And the paint jobs, of course, are the star of the show, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Cake.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, beautiful things if that's your thing.
So this collection of bikes here, there's a purpose, there's a reason behind it. You're trying to catalogue Klein bikes from a certain period?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah, I suppose. So for me, it's that kind of 91 to 95 period, but real focus on 92 and 93.
Why is that?
Because those, I think most collectors would accept that those were the two most instrumental years where they were most full of sort of development and the most sort of attractive colours. So yeah, 92 and 93 would be the main colours and the main era. So these ones here are the earliest ones I've got from early 91 to late 91, these three models here. And then we start sort of moving through. That's one of the last Kleins that they made in with what they call the MC1 bar and stem. When they were still using an 1 1/4 quill, but in one of their most iconic Gator fade colours.
Yeah, I think most viewers probably recognise that paint job, wouldn't they?
It's super cool. Yeah, and so it's got 3 colour flips. So whether you're standing from the front, the side, or the back is a different colour depending on your perspective. So really clever to be able to put that together.
But you're saying the neon paint jobs don't age so well, I guess.
They don't age so well, no, exactly. Once you guys go, all the blinds come down, leave these things in the paint for too long, and absolutely the light will fade them pretty quick. But that's why they're special, you know, to try and keep them in that sort of condition.
So let's have a walk down the line. So 93.
Yeah, so over here then we've probably got the most valuable part of the collection. So these on this side, the Adroit, which was their top-end race bike, where even more oversized tubes, even lighter tube gauge profiles, drilled out dropouts.
Eternal cape routing as well.
Still all eternal, yeah, absolutely. So these bikes had actual sort of carbon inserts in the rear stays and in the fork to try and provide a little bit more suppleness, because you can imagine with the big tubes they were pretty harsh. But these are super sought after. They didn't make so many of them, so to sort of to try and get hold of an Adroit is probably most Klein collectors desire, and some absolutely stunning colour. So this was an early 92, again in the Gator colour, and then that became available in Attitude a little bit later.
Okay, and not 1, 2, 3, 4 here.
There's 4 in the MC1s, and then there's 2 MC2 Adroits as well behind you.
Okay. The reason I have the 4, I guess, is the paint jobs.
It's the paint jobs, yeah. So this is 92, and then for 93 onwards, the main changes really were that they actually painted on the logos at that point. So these were decals under clear coat. These were all painted on. So they just got even more sort of intricate as they went. And so, yeah, I mean, the beauty of Klein is that they did so many different colours that were available each year. So, you know, you could literally have the same frame in a dozen colours. And then there were a number of colours that never even made it to the catalogue that were kind of special request only, that are even more sought after. Yeah. So I think it's just trying to fill the back catalogue of colours, I think, which is crazy.
Definitely keep you busy.
Yeah, it does.
Down to the bottom of the line, this one definitely stands out. The Rascal.
Yeah, so that was the second one I bought. And I just love the colour scheme, actually. So the Rascal is basically a very similar rear triangle and main tubes, but without obviously the big oversized fork.
Definitely stands out.
So that was a sort of a slightly more entry-level price point. But beautiful colour as a full XTR M900 bike there. And obviously much more supple to ride with the narrow gauge fork.
And your forks do look super fat up close and from
absolutely.
the front, don't they? Yeah.
Very aggressive and definitely Klein. So and the forks are super valuable.
Okay, yeah. And on the other side?
Yes, the other side we're kind of getting on a little bit now.
More modern now.
Yes, exactly. So these obviously got a more familiar look to them. So 94 Klein further, and again, you know, they sort of very much painted that by hand to get that kind of granite sort of look. And then got 95 through to early 96 with the Nightstorm Attitude. Most of them are XTR bikes, but with a lot of these, they've been built with CNC'd hubs and cranks and brakes, which was very much in vogue. All sorts of US builders coming up with cool stuff in those years. Most broke, but it was shiny and purple in many cases, and people loved it. So to try and get hold of the parts, none of these bikes have been bought as a bike. They've all been bought as a frame and fork, and then literally just finding the right parts and getting them refurbished. Okay. So that it all goes together.
Which is the youngest bike here? That's 96.
Yeah, so this is January 96. That is the youngest bike. So that in itself is 25 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So
And they started to trek.
they sold a Trek, and I think it was October 1995.
Okay.
So so that was literally 3 months into the Trek ownership, using up sort of parts and
The
things.
last of the Klein.
Yes.
Proper Kleins.
Yeah. Once you got to the sort of what they class as the '96 model year, that was very much sort of the Trek influence.
Not a true Klein.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to upset Nigel at Trek. You won't love me anymore. But it took a different direction from that point.
Okay, yeah. And one thing these bikes all have in common is a lack of suspension.
Yes.
And there's no V-brakes and one set of bar ends, which is unusual.
That's because it kind of came built into that Klein handlebar.
Okay, yeah.
So,
Really?
that's a one-piece bar.
Carbon.
So it's a one-piece carbon bar with the bar end inserted into it. So that's why that's there. So I don't have an anti-bar end thing. It's just I think they look nice and clean without them. So
I definitely agree, especially the one-piece handlebars.
Exactly.
I mean, where do you start if you want to build a classic Klein and get the parts? I mean, I guess he's not out of the box. Like
No.
this, you source the parts and put them yourself.
Yeah, so there's two different ways of doing it. There's you kind of find this amazing frame through a contact that you've got, and then hopefully in many cases the paintwork's really sound and doesn't need much doing to it. There are some great UK painters that have been fantastic. John at Klein's Painted has been amazing in just restoring them where they're needed.
Okay.
And then you begin to sort of assemble the parts that will reflect that particular colour scheme best. Or alternative, the other way is that you kind of begin to amass a collection of sort of components waiting for a frame that may or may not turn up.
Okay.
And so we kind of generally attack it from both angles, and so that you've kind of got a stock of XTR derailleurs or shifters or Campagnolo rims, those sorts of things, light saddles.
I've never seen so many XTR Rim X in my life.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Place.
Yeah, I mean they're not too difficult to come by,
Really?
but they are but they are difficult to come by when they haven't been trashed.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so trying to find them in mint condition, that is more challenging.
Okay.
So and stuff here has come from USA, from Germany, from Switzerland, Spain, Austria, Indonesia, Canada, literally all over the world to bring these together. And same with things like pedals, trying to find pedals that still are new.
These all look box fresh.
Yeah, many of them are.
Are they?
Yeah.
How important is it that the bike's a sort of original spec, like catalogue spec to you? Is that?
Yeah, I think it's very important. I mean, it sort of gets a bit sort of over the top, I suppose. But actually, I think if you're going to do it, you want to try and build bikes that were available in that particular year.
Yeah.
And that's what we've tried to do. So it takes a lot of research to try and work out, was that crank available in that year? Did they make it in that colour in that year? Because colours change. And so I'm not proud about it, but I think I've probably become a bit of a geek on sort of early to mid 90s mountain biking. Yeah, I think it just completes the project and makes it the real deal, I suppose.
And you're very much about Klein, because I do see the two non-Klein bikes on there. So
yeah.
Is there a long-term plan for this collection? Was there a plan? Or just...
I don't think there's ever been a plan, and so it's just something that just continues to kind of grow. And I think as long as I have a love for it, then there's always something else around. I mean, Klein for me will always be, I think, where my heart is, but there were lots of other cool brands. I mean, all of this stuff is all American. I mean, all the frames and forks, the drivetrains, the American cranks and hubs and things. But brands like Yeti, Fat Chance, they made super cool stuff.
They still fit into a collection. And
I think they do. I mean, these are kind of justified, I think, in my mind, because they're chromoly, whereas Klein was entirely an aluminium brand. So to have some chromo bikes in the collection is nice. So you've got a 94 Yeti Pro Fro and a 95 Fat Chance Yo Eddie, which is pretty iconic, again, with the original forks. But we mustn't overlook this one. This was a very kind gift, actually, from Andy at Alf Jones in Wrexham, which is a new old stock, never built, 1995 Attitude in Sea and Sky, never built. So he had it on his wall in his store for many, many years. And then one day he very kindly gifted it to me, which was incredible, and so it will remain unbuilt because that's where the value is, and the fact that it's managed 26 years of never getting built. So the fork's never been cut down or anything like that. And
what's the long-term plan? Is it as an investment?
I think, I keep telling myself it's an investment. I keep telling my wife it's an investment, and she's never believed me. But actually, I think, ironically, it probably is an investment at the moment. I mean, this last sort of 12 or 18 months has seen a huge uplift in interest in vintage mountain bikes. So actually, there's like grips and things being something like Klein grips selling for upwards of £100. You've got the original grip, you know, and now thankfully I've never paid anything like that, you know. So I think there is probably an investment in a lot of this. Obviously, with all of these things, is how long the appeal lasts. So right now, if I was to cash in, then probably be okay. But try to do it in a few years, younger people wouldn't see the value in it probably. But right now, it's very satisfying.
Okay. Yeah. And if you could keep one bike,
everybody asks that. What's your favourite bike?
There must be one favourite.
I think
the first one.
The favourite bike is generally the one you're working on next.
That's true.
Yeah, I think that unfortunately is I've said it for a lot of us in life, isn't it? You know, we're never satisfied with what we've got. It's always the next thing. However,
push come to shove,
it probably wouldn't be the most valuable. And I think it's the one here, that this Gator Attitude.
This one here.
I like that for a lot of reasons. I think the colour is amazing. It's got a really nice story in as much as that it's late '93, and around that period they were moving over to what they call the second generation, with the different bar stem configuration. They'd gone away from the quill, so there was a different setup on the fork, and they at the same time they moved over to a new logo. And so you can see that the logo is different to the ones that preceded. Right, yeah. So it's a nice example, and this is all original paint, a nice example of one of those transitional bikes where they were using up old frames, but it's moved over to the new logo. And for that, that's the appeal, I think, probably. That would be very rare, probably one of the most rarest for that reason. And they only made that frame for 1 year with that tube gauge. And I like the fact that it's kind of got a nice classic blend of silver, Cook Brothers predominantly componentry, as opposed to the very kind of bright coloured ones that were very much around at that time as well. So, I mean, it still draws attention, but it's a little bit more subtle, I think. So for me, push come to shove, probably that one.
Oh, that's a good shout. Yeah. I mean, I'm speechless. It's a breathtaking collection, and I really appreciate you sharing it with me and the viewers on the channel. So yeah, big thanks for
my pleasure. And I hope everybody either enjoys this, and if Klein's not your thing, then maybe these are. But it's a very satisfying thing to do.
So that has been an incredible tour of some quite incredible bikes. And it is fantastic to meet somebody so passionate about restoring retro Kleins and bringing them back to their former glory. These are bikes that definitely deserve to be restored and looked after for future generations, because they are so important to the evolution of bikes, particularly mountain bikes. And they look sensational. And it really has been a fantastic day. Definitely a red letter day for sure. So big shout out to Andy for sharing his collection, his passion and insights into these stunning bikes here. And hopefully you enjoyed it as well. And if you did, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe as well. I'll see you all again very soon. Thank you so much for watching.